There is, without a doubt, optimism in the air. Thankfully, there's more film releases. There's a bigger box office. It looks like we may even hit that $10 billion mark this year based on what everybody's talking about.
This is the Box Office Podcast. I'm Daniel Loria, editorial director of Box Office Pro, the pulse of theatrical exhibition. And in this week's episode, we are speaking with Sperling Reich, the executive editor over at Celluloid Junkie, who goes over the highlights from the ground over at CineEurope 2026, which wrapped up last week. Sperling was there and brings us some highlights from his reporting, which you can find over at celluloidjunkie.com, and previews some upcoming industry webinars to attend. You can sign up to those over at cjcinemasummit.com. Before then, we've got a full recap of the weekend box office and a preview of the July 4th weekend that is ahead of us. Joining me once again on the panel, we've got Rebecca Pahle from Box Office Pro, and making his return since the CinemaCon edition of this show is Diogo Hausen, the movie guide manager over at the Box Office Company. Rebecca, Diogo, welcome back. I know what Diogo watched last weekend, but I'll start with you, Rebecca. Did you get to make it out to the movies, or were you like me and watched every single soccer game that had been on over the last, 20 plus days? I've lost track of time, Rebecca.
I'm looking at the groups of 30, no, I did not do any soccer.
That was ages ago. We're well past
That's over? Okay. So, yeah, no soccer on my end, but I got out to see two movies. One, very high culture, The Third Man at Film Forum. They struck a new 35 print. It's just the best looking movie ever made of all time. I'm never going to give up a chance to see that. And then over the weekend, got out to the AMC Empire 25 to finally catch Masters of the Universe, which was fun.
You hadn't seen that yet. I missed it entirely. I guess like a lot of folks did.
It's good. I can see why it didn't. It feels very much like you're watching 7-year-olds play with action figures, like in a good way, in a fun way. Like it very much has that vibe. But I just don't know how much actual 7-year-olds today are interested in that.
It's probably going to be 37 to 57-year-olds that paid money to see that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it's gonna hold on. I think it's gonna develop a following. It's cute.
It's all we can hope for these days.
Fisto, you got a character named Fisto.
Yeah, I don't know if he was talking about cult followings after a underwhelming box office run. Diogo, did you see in the sidelines at that USA game a week back? I think you had Edward Norton talking to himself, a little bit bruised up. We hadn't seen that for a while. I kid. It was Edward Norton next to Brad Pitt in a nice comeback cameo at the USA game. That was another movie that didn't really take off at the box office, but found, I think, a new life in the DVD era back then. Still, I think, in the beloved by toxic fandom and also regular people, market. It's a weird Venn diagram. Not too many movies get to be in the middle. And talking about toxic fandom, Diogo, we have plenty of people that we could find to tell us how much they disliked Supergirl, but you are not in the, let's say, Snyder bro camp. If anything, you're probably the most pro Superman fan I can find. After we watched footage of Supergirl at CinemaCon, you were the only person in our group, in our cohort, that came out excited, not even liked it. We were excited to watch it. I have to hear what you thought of Supergirl and where you watched it this last weekend.
Yeah, I'm a Superman golden retriever. I'm just forgiving and always happy to have more. And I was excited for it. As a big fan of the Tom King graphic novel, I was going in ready to see what was happening, and I thought it was super mid. I was disappointed.
That's not a good pull quote.
Yeah.
Super mid for Supergirl.
Yeah. It felt very, right down the middle for me. Not to say that it was like the worst movie I've ever seen, but it just wasn't the momentum I was hoping for in the DC universe.
Where did you catch the movie?
Oh, I saw it in IMAX at the Americana here in Glendale. In LA. Nice. Yeah, it was nice. First movie I've been to since getting shoulder surgery. So I've been sidelined since Mortal Kombat. And before that, the last movie I saw was Fight Club 4K remasters.
Well, there
so
you
thanks
go.
for bringing that up.
I brought it
Yeah.
up. Yeah, I didn't even know that I got a 4K re-release.
Yeah.
Let's know how plugged in
It
I
was
am
fun.
in this industry. Well,
Yeah.
we had an underwhelming opening weekend, as we just previewed, for Supergirl, which opened to $38 million. For reference, that is below the $46 million of the Marvels that opened in 2023. And it's actually not that far away to where Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, horrible title if you're going to do an homage.
They did change it anyways, right?
Did they just,
Like
I mean,
After,
how many
somewhere down the
times did
line.
they retitle this thing?
Yeah.
Anyway, that
It was-
embarrassment of a movie, also a DC title that just didn't work. From
It was
another
like what? It
generation.
was late March 2020. They had a lot of time on their hands.
Yeah. Well, whatever
Fiddle with
they
a lot of
called it.
titles.
That thing opened to $33 million in 2020. Supergirl opening to 38. So between Birds of Prey and the Marvels, it's definitely not the result that DC or Warner Brothers were hoping for. And we have to do a postmortem on this, guys. I think, frankly, from what we saw at CinemaCon, I had my doubts. But to be very honest, I had my doubts from what we saw at CinemaCon about James Gunn's Superman. And when the movie came around, I was interested enough to watch it. I liked it. I think the first 20 minutes and the last 20 minutes are perfect. They nailed it. Everything in between, I'm not sure I liked it or if it's any good, but it doesn't matter. If you nail the first 20 and last 20 minutes, chances are you're going to come out feeling pretty good about what you just saw. Diogo, what went wrong from an audience perspective? Because the cinema score here was not good. And looking at these Rotten Tomatoes critical scores, it wasn't good either.
First and foremost, the script for me. The dialogue in this was just kind of non-existent. And I think the strongest parts of Superman was just him and Lois talking to each other, like debating Superman philosophy and their chemistry and all of that. So when this movie, all of the chemistry was between her and a dog that at CinemaCon she reminded us was not there.
And you can definitely, I everyone liked the dog in Superman, but it is visibly a CGI dog.
Yeah.
Which is the movie, the central plot is the dog's been harmed and she has X number of, like, it's a ticking clock to save her dog.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to see, I don't want to see a nice, like, fun Hollywood tentpole about a dog who's going to die, even if it is a CGI dog.
We've had 4 John Wicks come out of a dog. So that's good.
But they got the dog death out of the way. They didn't, like, linger on it.
Yeah, that's true. They didn't have the dog carnage. Yeah, not great.
And that's what it came down to. Like the script, the things that they changed from the comics made it feel like it was, we're going to do a little bit of Guardians, just like a touch of John Wick, and we'll throw in some Mad Max Fury Road there, but not really commit to anyone. So it just felt like it could have come out in one of those late stage DCEU movies, like around a Shazam kind of thing, where it's like, look at how much fun we're having. Look at how much fun we're having, instead of actually focusing on the characters and making the fun come out organically.
Like, it's a Shazam sequel comparison. That's not good. That is not.
I'm sorry.
And again, not to say Diogo is a soft touch when it comes to Superman things, but Diogo came out of the CinemaCon thing excited. We've already established you're not one of these Snyder guys that are crawling all over the internet. They come out of the woodwork every 3 months, it feels like.
Yeah.
You're probably one person that's as in the bag as you could be for a movie like this. And for you to come out underwhelmed, I think is reflective of a movie that just fell short in every single demographic. It fell short of the box office, fell short with critics, with audiences. And at this point, I'm not sure this gets to $100 million domestically. It's that concerning. Now, let's be very clear here. As much as I'd like to say this, it's not a situation where we throw our hands up and say, the superhero movie is dead. Here's more proof. That's not the case. While Spider-Man is just killing it in the pre-sales. That's about to come out and just break open the box office at the end of July. That's not the case. The superhero movie is fine. This type of superhero movie isn't. And I think one of the reasons that drew me into watching James Gunn's Superman, and if you remember back in our Superman box office history episode of this podcast, Diogo, our friend Russ Fisher, and I went in and said, hey, you have a great Superman origin story from Richard Donner. You have a really good reboot from Zack Snyder. do we really want to try out and do another origin story? We want to see something fresh and different. And at the end of the day, that's what James Gunn gave us. He gave us James Gunn's Superman. It was a James Gunn movie. That was fine. I hadn't seen that before. I enjoyed it. But in that CinemaCon footage I saw, it looked a lot like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4. It looked a lot like a Star Wars spinoff. And I've seen that.
Yeah, the visual effects the screen looked very dark. It looked like the sort of thing that you would have seen. If not like in a Shazam sequel type movie, then like it's maybe the fourth Ant-Man is the sort of visuals you might be looking at. I mean, at this point, we don't know as we record this because the actuals are not in yet, but this is like Joker Folie à Deux level, right? Pretty much exactly at this point.
Actually, Rebecca, we have the actuals in. If Joker Folie à Deux was 37.6 in terms of weekend actuals, the weekend actuals we just got in from Warner Brothers has Supergirl at 37.1 million. So yeah, I mean, it's right there. You're absolutely right. Now, we also have to distinguish that there's a big difference between a Joker sequel coming out of a huge blockbuster hit, like the first Joker movie did, and there's
an R-rated movie.
Right. An R-rated movie, it's a very big difference. And something like this. This doesn't prove that the superhero movies are dead. This doesn't prove that James Gunn doesn't know what he's doing with DC and the DC Comics universe. We'll find out eventually. There's still Clayface coming up. The only thing this proves is that the James Gunn DC Comics universe at this point can't successfully launch a C-tier superhero. And that's what Supergirl is. Supergirl isn't something that many people grew up with, or isn't something that a lot of people had an interest with in comics, or that was around in a lot of TV shows. For someone like me, a casual fan, for someone like Rebecca, our exposure to a Supergirl story starts at zero. She doesn't really have too much of a background in the silver screen, in the cinema. And in television, it's been extremely limited. I know there's that TV show that was out there very recently, but it's still not an A-tier superhero when we talk about the DC Comics family. Now, Marvel has been able to pull that off. They got a B-tier superhero in Iron Man and turned it into probably its most iconic hero in this generation. They've gone to the F tier and fished out people like Ant-Man and the Guardians of the Galaxy and turned them into something. The only thing this tells us right now is that the James Gunn DC universe can't go deep into the roster and pull out huge blockbuster hits.
Yeah,
maybe this won't be a problem if the movies aren't that expensive. I'm not sure if that's the case with something like Supergirl.
So I gotta say, I mean, to look at something of a silver lining here for this movie, if you compare where we are now to where we were in the wake of Joker 2's underperformance in October 2024. At least we have other movies now.
Exactly.
Supergirl can disappoint. Supergirl can underwhelm. Just like a movie like, Masters of the Universe, to just bring out something, I just saw recently.
Perfect.
Movies can underwhelm and it's not a crisis point.
That's exactly
Whereas,
what I wanted to get to.
October 2024, Joker 2 failing to really catch any interest, the whole month was kaput.
It wiped us out. It wiped us out for the rest of the month. Without Joker 2, we had to go into
Terrifier 3.
Basically, and that's
cheers
the
to Terrifier 3,
away from a cross-quadrant movie, right? So no, you're absolutely right. We're in a situation right now, as opposed to where we were with, let's say, Birds of Prey in 2020, where nothing worked, right? Or something like The Marvels, and I think that was 23, if I'm not mistaken. And then Joker 2, where if those movies didn't work, there was nothing else to step in. That's not the case this year. Because in first place, we had Toy Story 5 do $70 million in its sophomore frame. We talk about Masters of the Universe not working, but we also talk about how Obsession Backrooms did fantastically well. And even if Mandalorian and Grogu did okay on opening weekend and then kind of fell off, we don't talk about those holds because those other movies lifted the entire box office. And that's where we are right now. We're not dependent on one of these superhero movies, on a C-tier superhero movie, to get us out of a jam. They can fail. That's okay. We can move on. What I would like to see is if these superhero movies fail, at least fail with something I haven't seen before, with something that feels different. Take a risk. This looked like something like a rehash of stuff that's on screen 3 to 4 times a year that's getting diminishing returns. And it was the wrong movie at the wrong time. You see young people going out to see original movies, get excited about things that they haven't seen before. And you see something like Supergirl which looks and feels and just reeks of the type of superhero movie you get on an off month 3 times a year for the last 10 years. Of course, people skipped it. I don't know who this movie was for.
Though I do have to wonder, I mean, I don't want to come across overly critical to a movie that has not come out yet, to a movie that we have not really seen much by way of marketing, but the new Spider-Man kind of looks like the same sort of Spider movie that we've seen. Is that immune from that sort of? It needs. I just wonder about this one. I mean, I know it's going to do bonkers. I know the pre-sales are insane, but it feels like that franchise, that character, has enough goodwill to maybe counteract. I don't know.
I think it has a lot of goodwill, and I'll say why. I think there's a big difference between an A-tier superhero that a general audience grew up with, that maybe they had a lunchbox of that character, that they have a personal connection to, that have a personal connection to prior movies like that, than something like Supergirl, which was always a risk. There's no established Supergirl validity or viability at the box office. You had to kind of will this into existence. And it was always going to be a risky spot to come in as the second new DC Universe title. Now, Spider-Man, yes, for me, I agree with you, Rebecca. I'm not too excited to see something that looks like every other Spider-Man movie. But, Diogo, you can chime in here. Here, with the new Spider-Man movie, you don't have a multiverse. Fine, that's okay. But you do have a reset. And I think that's probably behind a lot of the buzz here, that it's a complete reset in reintroducing the Spider-Man character with characters that have been there before, but in a new context. I don't know if that's enough of a draw, but could you go into
I think it is
comic book
kind
fan?
of curiosity, I think, to launch, if not another trilogy, at least to get it over the... And then if the movie's good, then...
Yeah. I mean, Diogo, what would you say is behind a lot of the hype for the Spider-Man movie that was obviously absent with Supergirl?
I think that Spider-Man has a lot going for it, just with the previous movies being good. Like, people really enjoying the previous movies makes them want to watch another one. It's like,
everybody comes in for that great box office analysis, by the way. What helps the movie if the last one was good?
But it makes sense. I mean,
we can't forget about that. If the previous one was good,
I mean, because Supergirl it had one good previous movie, and then I mean, they did not have that goodwill built up from Justice League, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Bat movies. I mean,
but she also didn't have a movie. She just had like a cameo in there. And Spider-Man, like, people are hyped about who's popping up. Like, there's Sadie Sink's character in there that people are spreading rumors about. Are we going to see maybe a little X-Men action there? Who knows? Right. So there's things to be excited about. Supergirl, unfortunately, coming out right after The Mandalorian, where it looked like she walked into the set of The Mandalorian for her own movie.
Got lost on the way to craft services.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did anybody get excited about this Lobo guy that Jason Momoa plays? Again, and talking about like C-tier villains, I'm sure in the comic book community, people know what a Lobo is.
He's like a space werewolf on a motorcycle.
That's a college football mascot in New Mexico. That's what I know that a Lobo is. But it's just... Yeah, it looks like a juggalo made out with a band member from Kiss. No, come on, man.
Accurate. I really like Jason Momoa as Lobo. There's a lot in this movie that I did like. Jason Momoa is one of them. Millie Alcock as Supergirl. Like, there's good things in it. I just wish they went all in bananas on the crazy lighting and coloring that we could have seen from the comics. I wanted to see Supergirl on a flying space horse. Just go nuts. Just go absolutely insane with it.
Except it looked like a James Gunn Marvel movie. That's what we saw at CinemaCon looked like. And again, just completely uninterested. And Rebecca and I went over it. There's a lot of options that we have right now with our time to go to the movies. For either of us, Rebecca, Supergirl didn't even strike a passing curiosity. I mean, what was off for you to make you decide, maybe I skip this one?
Just the predictability of it. I mean, looking at the trailer to that, I mean, in CinemaCon, we saw a nice chunk of footage, and then, comparing my reaction to that versus my reaction to the Doomsday trailer that they played at the Disney presentation. They played it back to back. They had to play it twice because people were losing their minds so much. I mean, that one, it's still hammered in. I mean, it was still familiar stuff, obviously, but it managed to get me excited just through, it looked epic. It looked like it was maybe gonna deliver something that at least Do the Marvel movies have like the storytelling? Do they have no? They have scale, and Doomsday looks like it's going to give us scale, at least based on the trailer. Whereas Supergirl, I mean, there's so much stuff out there that I still need to see. Thank goodness. Like,
Yeah.
I'll wait on Supergirl.
Diogo, is James Gunn's DC universe in trouble after this underwhelming opening weekend for Supergirl, or is that something that we have to wait until Clayface or even Man of Tomorrow comes out?
I think we have to wait. I don't think it's in trouble yet. I think this is like Iron Man to Incredible Hulk situation.
Okay.
Where the second movie is like, oh, this didn't work for a lot of people. There's still like some fun to be had in here, but
Yeah, but
You can
people saw
course
those
correct.
movies.
Yeah.
Diogo.
rewatch movie.
People saw those movies. People paid
Oh, yeah,
money
people-
to see
people
both
did
those
see
movies.
Yeah,
Nowhere near enough people to make this a viable proposition.
yeah.
Paid money.
And
to
while
see
we're
That's
staring
true.
down the barrel of, we don't know what Warner Brothers situation is going to be like a year,
Yeah.
2 years from now.
I think if James Gunn can remain as objective with other people's scripts and movies as he is with his own, it'll be good. I think they have to learn that lesson right now because the writer of Supergirl is taking on Wonder Woman, and I don't want to see the same mistakes made again.
I think that's fair. I think that's a concern that we have to have it, for the future. I echo what you're saying. I think it's too early to say that the James Gunn era is done or is in trouble. I think it was always going to be a challenge going from Superman to reviving a superhero that nobody really knows too much about, that doesn't really have a background as a cinematic event. By the way, the same thing applies to Clayface because there's not that many Venoms and Jokers, and at least Venom and Joker are well known outside of the comic book community.
Mhm.
Nobody knows what a Clayface is unless you read Batman.
Clayface is more of a Craven the Hunter type.
That's what I'm scared for. A Morbius. I mean, I think if you told me Clayface is Morbius's best friend or high school boyfriend, I'd believe you. I have no idea who these guys are.
I'm hoping with young people enjoying going to weird horror movies that maybe we can pull some of that in. That maybe, hey, if you like obsession and wacky horror like this, the guy with the melty face might be more interesting to you than a superhero thing.
As long as the movie's good, like you said, Diego, if it's good, I think the word's gonna get out. I think it'll have a shot at. I mean, just look at something like Obsession, a super messed up R-rated horror movie. People want to see this stuff, and it's just there are some films that you look back at and you're like, oh, that deserved a bigger audience. There's always going to be that, but like the film being good has to be the number one thing there.
It's a big part of it. I also think fortunately, it's a competitive period in the box office, and we're not here to root for a single studio or a franchise or a producer. We're here to root for the industry. We're here to root for exhibition, and exhibition has a lot to root for. There's a lot of movies that are working. Rebecca has the best point of the podcast of the month, which is it doesn't matter if these things individually don't work. It doesn't matter if Masters of the Universe underwhelms. There's other things coming behind it. It's not that big of a deal for Supergirl to be a misfire because Toy Story 5 is right there behind it. And we've got a number of movies coming up ahead of us. And this July 4th weekend, guys, there's a ton to pick from. The number one title, I do have to say, is not going to live up to where other entries of its franchise have been. Right now, Minions and Monsters, the Illumination film from Universal, is tracking to open between $65 and $75 million on a 3-day basis.
It's not going to break that $100 million mark, but I feel like that's 65. That's nothing to.
No, nothing to sneeze at. We definitely need it, and it's there to be part of a whole, but it's not going to be leading the entire weekend, or at least not leading in the way that Toy Story 5 did. I think the 5-day forecast that we have right now is between, let's say, $80 to maybe $100 million on a 5-day holiday weekend basis, since it's a Wednesday opener. So it's good news for the box office, maybe not great news for Universal that maybe was aiming a little bit higher, but these movies tend to hold on. There's a lot out there. I do think there's going to be some cannibalization between that title and Disney's live-action Moana coming out on July 10th. Moana right now wobbling a little bit in our tracking. We're forecasting an opening weekend in the mid $60 million range for a franchise that has been used to a lot more. Again, grosses that are good for us, but not great for us. parts of a whole, but not here intending to lead an entire weekend. And then looking elsewhere here on the weekend forecast, we've got another opener, this time from Angel Studios, Young Washington, right now tracking between $12 to $17 million on the 3-day frame. It's opening on Thursday, July 3rd, so we have a 4-day forecast between $15 and $20 million for the title. Looking at how things are shaping up, it's becoming kind of obvious. Minions going to be number 1. Number 2 is going to be Toy Story 5. And then number 3, I hate to say it, it's going to be a big drop for Supergirl. I think Young Washington beats Supergirl for the number 3 spot. Unfortunately, Supergirl, I think, is going to see a 60% plus drop in its sophomore frame, and it will have to settle for 4th place in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think it's going to get swallowed up. Though for a second, I thought you were going to say number 3 would be Obsession, which I kind of wouldn't be surprised at this point.
Don't be surprised at this point for that. Well, we say that. We previewed it in last weekend's podcast. Obsession has a lot behind it, and that Gen X crowd hasn't really shown that it'll show up on opening weekend.
You got a holiday weekend. I mean, I'm
And we saw it with the Gen X crowd. Jackass Best and Last came in well under our opening weekend forecast, an $8.5 million opening weekend for the final entry in the big screen Jackass universe. Maybe not the demo that is really looking forward to going to the movies right now. Underwhelming for sure, but not surprising, I think, if we just look at where the demographics are in this day and age. Elsewhere in the marketplace, we've got Evil Dead Burn also opening on July 10th, tracking to open at around the $30 million mark. And that all leads up to the PLF monster that the Odyssey is going to be in mid-July. Guys, there's a lot to pick from. And unfortunately, it is the sort of context where if a movie, at least from a tentpole basis, doesn't open big, it's going to have a very hard time finding room on that calendar. There are independents, there are limited releases that can still fight their way into enough screens, into having a niche for themselves. But movies like Supergirl, man, the audience wasn't there, the critics weren't there, and the box office just isn't there to back it up for a deep run. But again, that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It just means there's a lot of competition in the marketplace, a marketplace which has been afflicted since the pandemic reopenings with there not being enough content to make up for bad weekends. And that's one of the highlights that our colleague Sperling Reich from Celluloid Junkie shared with us from his time over at CineEurope last week in Barcelona. He joins us after this commercial break to go over a number of things that happened at the event. He tells us all about the Infinity Vision initiative that Disney is putting out there. A lot of question marks, and honestly, not too many questions were answered, judging from what Sperling shares with us. And he also previews the upcoming webinar series that CJ Cinema Summit is going to be hosting. For more information on those, go over to cjcinemasummit.com. Diogo, Rebecca, thank you for joining us once again. And now, with any further ado, here is Sperling Reich from Celluloid Junkie going over CineEurope 2026.
Imagine a world where your cinema's digital experience is as unforgettable as the movies you show. At Boxoffice, we strive to make that world a reality. We offer innovative solutions like custom-built websites, mobile apps, and user-friendly ticketing pages, crafted to meet the unique needs of cinemas. It's all about enhancing customer loyalty and making booking a breeze. Take your cinema's online experience to the next level with Boost. Contact us today at sales@boxoffice.com to learn more.
We are back here on the Box Office Podcast with Sperling Reich, the executive editor and co-founder of Celluloid Junkie. He is here to talk about everything that happened at CineEurope last week. We weren't in Barcelona in person, but you were there, Sperling, for Celluloid Junkie. I guess all in all, looking back at a big week where, it's been a pretty solid year so far, how would you describe the mood in Barcelona for CineEurope last week?
Instead of cautiously optimistic, I would say really totally optimistic at this point. There is without a doubt optimism in the air. Thankfully, there's more film releases. There's a bigger box office. It looks like we may even hit that $10 billion mark this year based on what everybody's talking about. And when you start talking to the vendors, and by vendors, I mean those manufacturers who are on the trade show floor, the Christie's, the Barcos, the NECs, the Sharps, the PCOs, the Coca-Colas, they are seeing some buying activity, which is not something we have seen in a very long time.
Oh, we need it, especially in this in this trade journalism business. Once the vendors get back up and running, that's really the true mark of health in this marketplace. Box office is great, but we need that to trickle back down into investment to see some real growth for the moviegoer to see what their dollar is going to, right? There's been a lot of conversation about PLF. There's been a lot of conversation about ticket prices, about admissions. So far this year, beyond the box office, what do you think the biggest trend in this business is based on what you heard in Barcelona last week?
100% premiumization, without a doubt. It is premiumization. The whole Warner Brothers and Paramount merger was not discussed at all. Like, it's almost as if it wasn't happening.
Is it treated like a done deal? Because I know the EU has pretty much paved the way for that to happen. Here in the US, DOJ sent out a ridiculous closing argument or closing document on it. It's really down to the state AGs to put up any sort of friction or challenge that at all. What's the vibe around the Warner Brothers Paramount thing among European exhibitors?
They aren't even talking about it. Of course, it's what can we do? What can we do? There's not much we can do. I think they pretty much are all looking at it as a foregone conclusion. Everybody knows what will happen. It won't be 15 films from Paramount and 15 films from Warner Brothers. It's just impossible to do that when you are going to be making more movies than you're making now with fewer people and less money. It just does. That's not the way life works. Right now, everybody's trying to make hay while the sun shines, essentially.
Yeah.
I will say that the Warner Brothers presentation here at CineEurope, first of all of the presentations, there were like 11 studios, from Mubi to Studio Canal to, of course, Sony and Warner Brothers and Disney and Universal, all those that you would expect, including Paramount. The Warner Brothers presentation here, much as it was in CinemaCon, was pretty much pull out all the stops, almost as if they were throwing the gauntlet down to say, all right, well, if next year, you know what, we're one studio with Paramount, who you going to keep? The people that made all these great movies with all this great animation we just showed you, and these two amazing movies, one with Tom Cruise, Digger, and one named Dune Part 3, or, the people that made, Scary Movie. So figure out who you want to keep.
Fair enough. I think it's very much spend the rest of the budget while we have it situation from what it sounds like.
Yeah, and actually, I would say even the studios were onto premiumization, whether it was Universal or whether it was Disney. They would always say, this movie is coming to your theaters in November on all premium formats. So premiumization is definitely the big topic of discussion right now.
Well, a big part of that as well came with Andrew Cribb's presence, the head of distribution over at Disney, in terms of explaining to exhibitors and the vendor community and the tech community what exactly Infinity Vision is. Our listeners will remember back at CinemaCon, understanding that Dune Part 3 was going to get that IMAX exclusive, that Disney was not going to have access to IMAX screens for the next Avengers title. Disney surprised us all by basically creating a new not really a premium format they're introducing. They just call this a certification program called Infinity Vision, where they were just going to certify screens that passed a certain benchmark, a certain threshold with this Infinity Vision mark. This wasn't ever a new PLF offering. This wasn't ever something that was going to bring tech forward. It seemed like a marketing angle to fight back on the See Dune in IMAX conversation. And I know Andrew Cribbs was set to speak to the tech community at the ICTA event. That's the International Cinema Technology Association. They have a small reunion on the Sunday before CineEurope starts. I know he was scheduled to speak to the tech community there. I know he had some space in the panels to talk to the exhibitor community at the event because it's coming up. We're leading into this December 18 release of the next Avengers title. And I have to be honest, I don't know what Infinity Vision is. And beyond sticking at the IMAX, I really can't see its purpose.
Well, it's funny you should mention all of these things because when Infinity Vision was first announced at CinemaCon, I thought, okay, well, we'll figure out what this is as time goes on. And within maybe 7 days of its announcement, we got a lot of what is referred to, and you probably get this too, Daniel, a lot of incoming. And what that means is a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls coming into us asking us, hey, do you know what, you must know, you cover this space. What is Infinity Vision? So
by the way, none of it positive. I think there's a lot of question marks and a lot of confusion over this Infinity Vision thing, its rollout, who's part of it, who won't be. It rattled some folks, not in a way of like they're nervous of not getting in. They're nervous that they have no information whatsoever about it. And we need to start communicating to the global industry how to be a part of this and how big of a deal Disney's planning to make out of this. Also, is this just a Disney initiative or is it just something that is going to start getting picked up from other studios?
Well, it's funny you should ask all of those things if you read the piece I wrote on. I was so proud that I wrote the first piece on Infinity Vision because Andrew Cripps, who I had been after for weeks, please just do it doesn't have to be you. It can be a tech guy. Just let me know. I'll talk to anybody. Just let me know what this is so I can write about it and get these people to stop calling and emailing me. Well, sure enough, he did show up at ICTA on the Sunday before, and he spoke about how they would love it to not be just a Disney thing, but trying to get all the studios on board ahead of time was going to be impossible.
No.
So they said, okay, let's just do it ourselves for now. And there's no way we can market 300 different RPXs and PLFs, and every single exhibitor has their own private label, white label, PLF. We can't market all of them, okay? We can barely, IMAX is doing the marketing for IMAX. ScreenX 4DX is marketing for themselves. We can't market 300 different PLFs. So what if we just created one that was kind of an umbrella that said, hey, we've checked these screens out and they're really good. So go see the film if you want a PLF experience. We can vouch for these. Well, that sounds awfully that sounds really like a certification program. Like they have people out in the field, much like THX did. THX was a certification program. It wasn't a technology, despite what everybody thinks. So Andrew Cripps on Sundays, the way he laid it out, this was a marketing scheme, not a format and not a certification program.
And that really aligns with what IMAX said in its last earnings call, saying like, hey, we've heard a lot about this. It sounds like a marketing thing to us. It sounded like a marketing thing to me as well. And now we've got Disney basically saying, yeah, that's what it is. We're using this to market a bunch of premium formats.
However, two things happened after I published because of course they should. Why should the actual publication of a story be the final word? So then during the Disney presentation on Wednesday, we published on Tuesday just to see if anything else would come out. What happened is Scott Foreman, who's the executive vice president and general sales manager over at Disney, took to the stage and he said, and he used the words, and I distinctly recall this, certification program. Because, of course, I had specifically said it wasn't a certification program. The next day I saw him, I congratulated him on the presentation, and I said, what is the deal? Is this a certification program? And he basically said, look, we're not sending people out yet. At some point, we're going to monitor what the feedback is coming from audiences. And if people who are a part of this program, this Infinity Vision program, are not holding up their end of the bargain as exhibitors, then we will send people out just to double check and verify, at least for now.
It's a good faith certification program. It's a certification program that doesn't certify anything beyond the marketing tag. I'm more confused now, Sperling. I'm sorry.
And so on Sunday, and I think they have a tough task, Andrew Cripps and Scott Foreman and everybody at Disney, to try and get this thing out. On Sunday, all of the exhibitors afterwards were just as confused as before. And they were really asking, like, okay, what is this? Now, I will say they gave an exclusive to Deadline. You got to love that. We are there covering on the ground, and they give an exclusive to Deadline that actually reports on it as if they were in Barcelona. But be that as it may, they got an exclusive where the only thing new that they reported is that you have to be, I think it's 16 meters wide, your screen, or 45 feet wide. And you have to have an immersive sound. So 5.1, 7.1, or Atmos. And your screen brightness has to be 14-foot Lamberts in 2D, and I think 6-foot Lamberts in 3D, if memory serves. But that was one of the big announcements at this CineEurope. And it wasn't even announced. I mean, literally on stage, maybe a 5-minute thing, yet it's what everybody was talking about because premium is now the new black.
Yeah, it's a big topic of conversation here, and it's something a lot of folks are still scratching their heads around. So I appreciate the update on that end. Looking forward here on the calendar, now that you're back, there's a couple of other topics here in the industry that we've been tracking since CinemaCon. And you host a webinar a number of times throughout the year where you can have these conversations, the CJ Cinema Summit.
Okay. Well, on July 1st, which was yesterday, we talked to Barco and GDC, and they were talking about their technologies. And at the same time, we were talking to some of their clients who actually deployed that technology. And in one case, it's HDR by Barco. In another case, it's the big LED screen that has sound that goes through the screen, which is a first for an LED screen, transmissive audio essentially through the LED screen, which they premiered at CinemaCon, or at least demonstrated at CinemaCon, and everybody went nuts for it. And we talked to somebody who has deployed it and what they thought of the technology. And we also talked to Alamo Drafthouse, which has deployed HDR by Barco. And of course, we're doing a rundown of, we did a rundown of CineEurope. And if you missed that, of course, you can always go to cjcinemasummit.com and all of the past sessions are there. One that we have that's coming up, I think, it kind of plays into CineEurope. It's about platformization. And it is going to be on the 7th of July. And if you want to sign up for it, you can. Again, cjcinemasummit.com. I'll make sure that it's up there, which really it's a structural shift away from operators fully owning their customer and the guest experience and the guest relationship toward, I guess, relying on third-party aggregators. So much like Booking.com for travel, or Expedia.com for travel, or Golf Now for golf. I'm going from memory.
Or Uber Eats for food delivery, right? It's something that we're seeing in a lot of different industries, and it looks like it's coming to the cinema industry as well.
Right, because Fandango, which has a dominant market share in the United States, they are going international slowly. They've done international work before. They were in Colombia, they were in Brazil with different companies, not under Fandango. But now Fandango wants to move into Europe. They're moving into the UK and Ireland first. Remember, they also own Rotten Tomatoes, so they do have a consumer-forward and consumer-facing side of their business that is their predominant business, where they aggregate tickets. And it's not just Fandango, it's others, Book My Show, or in India. There's tons of these services where you are, like Cineville, subscribing to movie tickets, but you actually go to a theater. So the theater doesn't have a direct relationship with the customer per se. Right. And so this is really looking at the structural shifts in exhibition, technology, and the demand flow, because there's like 4 different, there's demand and discovery, and basically it's whether somebody gets disintermediated. That's really what we're talking about here. Who controls the transaction? How does it work operationally? And how do we know who is coming to the theater once they purchase the ticket?
And there's benefits and risks to this. I mean, if you look at the restaurant industry here in New York, there's a lot of concern on how much control they have with their clients. And meanwhile, a lot of them are signed up to these platforms because it gives them a base of clients that they might not actually have the access to. So there's lots of pluses and minuses to this conversation. It's great that you guys have this forum. Could you remind us when this webinar is going to be airing and how folks can sign up?
I believe it's July 7th. It is at 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern time, and of course 6 o'clock in Europe, 5 o'clock in London. I have a feeling it might be 8:30 in the morning Pacific time. So definitely go to cjcinemasummit.com. We will post everything there. We will post it on our LinkedIn as well. If you can't make it, what's really happened with the summits that we do every month, we do a couple of them a month, is that unlike the pandemic when everybody showed up live and then very few people watched it on demand, now it's the exact opposite. And so if you register, you will get a link telling you when it starts and also when you can watch it on demand.
Oh, it's a great place to have these industry-wide conversations. Wonderful work that our colleagues and competitors, friendly competitors, we got to say that, over at Celluloid Junkie do. And don't forget to visit celluloidjunkie.com to check out that story that Sperling just told us about on Infinity Vision and its rollout. Some great insights there. Sperling, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.